Before this video starts, I want to tell you guys about my experience in the theater watching this movie. And I want to start off this video with talking about this because I think that it's important for my overall thoughts on the movie. I have a point to this, I promise. So just tag along. I saw the movie Champions a few months ago. That's the movie directed by one of the Farrelly brothers, right? The guys who made Dumb and Dumber. Starring Woody Harrelson about a bunch of mentally challenged basketball players. And going to the screening, there were lots of people who were Down syndrome and had, mental disabilities there. And to see them all together watching a movie, it was one of the most magical movie experiences I've ever had. Because it's a movie about a certain group and they were seeing themselves on screen, and it was a really triumphant movie. And it was nights like that that reminded me of how important and how powerful film can be. Some people I know, and I'm sure you guys have the same experience with this, some people don't even really like movies. They'll put it on just to kind of like pass the time. Because you guys know, people who are watching this video know how powerful film can be. It can really be an out-of-body experience and can really have a truly powerful impact on you. So Champions was a really championing experience, pun intended for that one. But the reason why I bring that up is because there's always a flip side to that coin. Killers of the Flower Moon, the 3.5-hour epic from Martin Scorsese. Going into this movie, I was just really his two love childs, his two love children, in the same movie. Like, sign me up, right? And going into the theater, there were a lot of First Nations people. Native Americans, indigenous, whatever term you want to use. I've been told, you're supposed to use this, supposed to use that. Don't use the word Indian. You can use the word, you know who I'm talking about. And there were a lot of those people in the theater. But walking out of the theater, you could tell that it was not a pleasant experience for them. There's the manager of the Cineplex there. And he's going how'd you guys like the movie? And they would go on these rants, basically, talking about how, this is still happening today and we only have so many resources. It's I'm sick to my stomach, and they were getting really loud, and it was a shocking experience for me. Just seeing how a group of people, obviously the movie's about injustice, but seeing that injustice internalized in a large group of people in a theater, it was something I've never experienced before. My parents kept telling me when they saw Saving Private Ryan in the theater, obviously I didn't see it in the theater, I was 3, right? Being born in 95. They were like, we went to that theater with a lot of veterans who were on the beach that day, and they were traumatized and they ran out of the theater. They couldn't handle it. Some people left the theater when watching this movie because it was too real for them. It hit too close to home. And just sometimes, yes, movies can be extremely powerful. And obviously I want movies to be uplifting. I want them to be, larger than life and, really feel like you can make something of yourself in this world. But sometimes film can do the opposite and really shine a light on injustice. And it can make you feel sick to your stomach. Now, I can't relate. But man, just seeing, and you could feel it. It was a tangible feeling in that audience. I'll talk about the movie in a minute, I promise. But it was a tangible feeling. So the reason why I bring this up is because you have to know yourself before going into this movie, because I was talking to another person before seeing this movie, and they said, oh, what movie are you going to see tonight? And I go, Killers of the Flower Moon. And someone goes, and I'm not going to name names, and I'm just saying what they said. Oh, it's more Truth and Reconciliation. Yeah, I'm not watching that. Whether you agree with it or don't agree with it, you have to acknowledge that there are people out there that think like that. So the reason why I say that is because when a movie tackles its subject matter, this movie is meant to provoke you. Its final shot and its final line is something straight out of Oliver Stone's JFK. I'm actually surprised that one of the characters did not look into the camera. It was that profound. It was that provoking. And it was not trying to hide what it was doing, right? When a movie goes into just that territory, and that's the thing when I wanted to start off this video like this, no matter what I say, people will be like, oh my God, how dare you disagree with me on this? And why don't you agree with me more on this? You know what I mean? So f it. I'm just gonna be talking about the movie, but I wanted to bring this up first because you have to know thyself before you go in. Know what kind of movie this is and choose whether or not to experience it. Because again, when a movie is this charged, you just have to know what kind of person you are and if you're able to handle it. Getting that out of the way, all my criticisms and critiques of the movie, and praises, obviously, they're gonna be about the movie, okay? I'll just say this. It's powerful. It really is powerful, and it will stick with you for a long time. And to see injustice like that, you know, it's kind of like 12 Years a Slave. It's like one of those type of experiences where you just see the hurt and the evil going on. And it's not a pleasant experience. But as a movie, this movie is really good. So yes, let's get the introduction out of the way, even though I've been talking for 8 minutes. Does Killers of the Flower Moon suck? Is it worth a watch? My name is Brandon, aka the Brando Critic. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this entire intro. I needed to say that. And some people will be like, how long does it take for him to talk about the movie? I'm talking about my experience. That's what a review is, right? And I want to say thank you to Into the AM for sponsoring this video. Of course, I'm wearing their merch, as always, in these videos. Very comfy clothing. They fit. I'm 6'8", and yeah, it's hard to find clothes that fit me. So Into the AM really helps out there. So check them out. Link is down below. Now, let's get started. Martin Scorsese is our director, one of the greatest of all time. The Departed, The Aviator, Raging Bull, Gangs of New York, Wolf of Wall Street, Goodfellas, Casino, The Irishman. I mean, like, there's so many, right? He's a great director. Leonardo DiCaprio, he's been in lots of Scorsese movies. Robert De Niro has also been in a lot of Martin Scorsese movies. Lily Gladstone is the newcomer in this bunch. Jesse Plemons. The story is about a man who comes home from World War I to live with his uncle in the Indian country of the Osage people. And they devise a plan to marry into the Osage family line because they have oil money. And they're going to kill them off to get the inheritance. Really evil, f***ed up. So what did I think of the actual movie? It's too long. And this is a weird talking point that I find is in a lot of different movies nowadays. There are a lot of 3-hour movies that are coming out nowadays. Some people go, oh, people can't handle long movies anymore. Go watch your Marvel, you ADHD kid. Someone said that to me today. I thought that one was pretty funny. But I've said this in many videos. I don't care how long a movie is. I will totally watch a movie that is 3 hours long. Absolutely. But it has to use its runtime effectively. Lots of my favorite movies of all time are 3 hours long. JFK, like I mentioned earlier. Oppenheimer that just came out. Wonderful. The Ten Commandments is like 4 hours long. The Snyder Cut. Great movies. I really do enjoy them. This one, I really do think you could have cut an hour out of it. Yeah, totally. Because I've also said in a lot of other videos, there are certain feelings that you have when watching a movie that everyone has at one point or another. And it's when you check your watch. That's always a bad sign. And I've checked my watch quite a few times in this movie because I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm liking everything that I'm seeing on screen. This is a good movie. But sometimes it does feel like the whole is less than the sum of its parts, meaning you have great direction, great acting, a great story. It's shot beautifully. The music is wonderful, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I'm thinking to myself, okay, I feel like next to scenes that we've already seen before, but maybe we see it from a different angle, and there's more of a character reveals justified for what's actually happening. The first time I checked my watch, I'm like, okay, well, we got to be about 2 hours in. It's 45 minutes. So that's the thing. I have no problem with long movies. There are movies like Braveheart, like Titanic, 3-hour movies that don't feel 3 hours to me. Even Avengers Endgame, I will use Marvel as an example here, right? I never felt the runtime in those movies. The Batman, right? Another superhero movie that came out recently with a 3-hour runtime. I didn't feel the length with those. And we can talk about those movies another time. But with this, I definitely felt like the runtime was not justified. So there you go. That was the big one. And again, like my mom was texting me today. It's like, oh, should I see this movie? And I'm going, well, it's a fantastic movie. And don't get me wrong, this movie is fantastic. But I'm like, don't watch it on a weekday at 8 o'clock because you won't get home until, 11:30. Or that's when the movie will end. Not to mention trailers and you got to drive home. You're going to be home like past midnight. So watch it on a Friday or Saturday where you know that you won't have anything to do in the morning, or watch it you know, at home. And that's really my only problem with the movie, because everything else in it was fantastic. I mean, Martin Scorsese, there's a reason why he's one of the best ever. All of his movies are extremely engaging. And yes, I did say this movie dragged, but for the most part, this movie is classic Scorsese. I mean, it's not a mobster movie, but it is about crime, and it is about rising the ranks and all these inner workings of, you know, the family business in terms of, you know, whacking people, right? Getting rid of certain people and scams and rising the ranks of the crime ladder and the fall from grace, and you see injustice. That is the classic Scorsese story, and it's told wonderfully here. It is. And not to mention, this is a beautiful movie. It's absolutely beautiful. It reminded me a lot of There Will Be Blood. That movie, I do think, is actually better than this one. That one is like, I'll use the term masterpiece for There Will Be Blood. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Lots of shots are just like paintings in that movie. Just like this one. It's beautifully shot. There's a lot of scenes even where I'm going, I feel like this is getting a little bit experimental. There's a scene with like a burning farm, and it's getting very artistic and very cinematic. And even though I'm thinking, well, I don't really understand it from a logical standpoint. Why are they deciding to shoot it like this? But who cares? It looks beautiful, right? And it kind of reminded me of, you know, Red Dead Redemption. I guess I was just playing that not too long ago. But of course, you know, it's like the lawlessness with, you know, cowboys and Native Americans and all that kind of stuff, right? So just playing that game not too long ago and then going to see this movie, you do see a connection there somewhat, right? A couple years difference, obviously, but I digress. And the music really impressed me in this movie. Sure, the score is maybe like 4 notes repeated over and over and over again, but it really did a great job capturing the tension of what was happening in the movie. You felt like there was like this underbelly of evil. Even though you couldn't really see it on the surface, you could just tell that there was like this looming doom that was surrounding everything, and you couldn't pinpoint it. And I think that makes it scarier. You just felt like the world was crumbling in on itself around, you know, these people. And I don't know if this was intentional, and maybe I just, you know, I'm kind of like hearing what I want to hear. But in the story, when the white people were getting the upper hand and they were basically screwing over these Native Americans for their money, and they're killing them and just doing the most terrible things, the music sounded more modern, more Western, more slide guitar, more electric. Whereas when justice was starting to get served, you hear more Native American drums, some more singing, some more, you know, beads. Again, like all the Native American instruments, you're starting to hear those more. And I don't know if that was just the one scene that I heard it in, but it felt to me like that's what was happening, because then when the tide would shift, you'd hear more guitar and you'd hear more of a muted kind of white sound. You know what I mean? It sounded more like white noise as opposed to music. I could be completely reading that wrong, but that's just how I saw the movie. Now, Leonardo DiCaprio, he's Leo. I think there are some actors in the world that are extremely talented, but they have that movie star look. They almost look too perfect. And Leonardo DiCaprio is one of these actors where I don't actually see, you know, Ernest, his character. I see Leonardo DiCaprio in a movie. It's just one of those actors. Natalie Portman feels like that too. Tom Cruise especially. He is the movie star. You're watching Tom Cruise, not Ethan Hunt. You're watching Tom Cruise, not Jerry Maguire. That kind of stuff, right? I'm not watching Jordan Belfort. I'm watching Leonardo DiCaprio play Jordan Belfort. But he's good. Like, he's good in everything that he does. De Niro, though, he impressed me. I mean, there's a reason why he is considered one of the greatest actors of all time. Not just of his generation, not just working today, like ever. I thought he just nailed the accent. I thought he nailed that empathetic, like, nature. Like, you really do feel like at some part in his body, he does care about these people. He speaks their language, and he really does, you know, at least to their faces, really care about them. But also what I love about this movie is that he is such a scumbag. He does the most terrible things, and yet he justifies it, and he genuinely thinks that he's the good guy. He genuinely thinks that he's not doing anything wrong. It's all for the greater good. It's what you're supposed to do. And that makes villains just way more interesting to me. Just, you know, a mustache twirler like, ha ha ha, I'm going to steal their land and I'm going to steal their oil, of course. It's boring, right? Unless you're making like a campy musical, which this isn't. You know what I mean? But man, he was so good. He was so good in this movie. And again, people say like, oh, how would you rank this amongst the other Robert De Niro performances? I have no idea, man. He is so good in Casino. He's so good in Goodfellas. He was good in The Joker. Like, man, like, Meet the Parents. He's so good, and he's so good in the movie. She's not in it enough. And I can see some people say, oh, of course, it's another movie about the white man. The white man's the main character. Yeah, I get it. However, you do see them as the villains. They don't paint them in a positive light. And you do see the Osage people as the victims here. And you see them as strong and resilient. And she's really good in that. She has this... You can feel the amount of hurt that she's carrying, but you also feel her strength and how she just... The best thing that she can do is just carry on. She has to carry on, and she loves her husband, even though like it's a difficult thing, right? Of course, you know, she can sense that he's doing these terrible things, and she can sense that something's wrong, but you know, those feelings there, at least how I perceived it, were real. But of course, no spoilers, but justice eventually prevails. Jesse Plemons is good in the movie too. I feel like he plays like the same character in a lot of things. But I want to talk about Brendan Fraser here. This is where I got taken out of the movie. So he doesn't show up for a very long time, okay? No spoilers, like real spoilers. But when I saw him on screen, I'm going, oh my God, right, he's in this movie. It was kind of like how Tobey Maguire showed up in Babylon. Super late into the movie, and he's got a very small part, but it's like this very recognizable actor. And I'm like, oh, he's in this movie? Like, I knew that because I, you know, hear it through, you know, articles online and through interviews and things like that. And I'm like, yeah, so I know that he's in this movie. But just seeing him on screen, it took me out of the movie going, oh yeah, right, he's in this movie. And it's just like, you're seeing Brendan Fraser next to John Lithgow and next to Robert De Niro and next to Leonardo DiCaprio. It felt like, it felt like you had like a 12-year-old kid playing in the NFL. Now, again, he deserved that Oscar. But like his first line, he's like, I need to speak to this man. I need to do it. And I'm like, oh, it was weird, man. It was weird because it was like, watch me act. I'm back in relevancy. I am now acting with Martin Scorsese. Look at how good I can act. Took me out of the movie, man. Totally. And I was talking to someone out of the theater going like, it was just weird how you saw such an A-lister. And of course, I guess now he's an A-lister, right? Everyone kind of recognizes him. And he is the most recent person to win the Best Actor. But then we were talking like, well, Oppenheimer did the same thing. All these like A-listers, Gary Oldman, Rami Malek, Casey Affleck are starting to show up in the movie where you kind of forgot that they were in it because they're not really in any of the trailers. But you heard about them, you know, through interviews and things like that. Oh crap, they're in this movie. But I think because it happens so often in Oppenheimer, it kind of dilutes that feeling, whereas it just happened like the one time here. And it really took me out of the movie. It's like, oh yeah, Brendan Fraser's acting in this movie, and it felt like it was, hey, wouldn't it be cool to have this random actor in this movie? That's how it felt to me anyway. So yeah, this review is something completely different from what I'm normally used to making. I'm normally used to kind of doing it more, I don't want to say scripted, but there's definitely talking points, and I had talking points in this movie, but I really wanted to kind of start off with that experience in the theater because that's what movies are supposed to do. I think it's just boring if you go like, well, the cinematography in this movie was an A, and then the sound design was a B, so it averages out to an A-. It's like, people who do that, people who like to review movies but review it in like that film school report card way, we're in the minority. We're totally in the minority. Most people don't watch movies like that. Just like the casuals, the normies, the people who just want to see a movie in a theater and are not the big cinephiles. They don't watch movies like that. And I don't like watching movies like that either. I want to feel something. I don't want to just like analyze the cinematography and the sound design and, you know, all these things. And I can appreciate all those things. And definitely I can see when a movie is just like, you know, amazing to look at. Like I can look at like Dune from a couple years ago and think of like how much of a technical marvel that was. Like amazing stuff, of course. But I have to be honest, when an experience like that happens, I have to talk about it because it really does affect you. And I think that's what movies are supposed to do. that are supposed to affect you. And this movie did a very good job at it, and it did land on its feet. My only real big criticism, and it's a big criticism to me, is that it is too long. And again, I have no problem with long movies, even though the fact that I'm saying that, they'll go, oh, you just don't like long movies. Okay. But I really did enjoy this movie. I just wish that it was shorter, because then I think you really could have packed a stronger punch as opposed to maybe spreading it out too thin. So for my overall rating, it's going to be a 4 out of 5. No, this movie did not suck. Yes, it's definitely worth a watch, but just be strategic about when you watch it. Will I ever watch this movie again? Probably, yes, in the future. I definitely want to get it for my collection. But again, it's one of those movies where it's not a movie that you can just rewatch over and over and over again. It's not that kind of movie. It's not really digestible. It's not a very digestible movie, especially if you are going to feel traumatized, or, I mean, I don't want to use the word triggered, but I'll use it anyway, triggered by what you see in the movie. Yeah, it's not a pleasant experience in terms of the subject matter of the movie, but you gotta be real. It's a really, really, really well-made movie, and it's engaging for the most part for a 3.5-hour movie. And yeah, like, this one is a really good one for sure. So there you have it, guys. Those are my thoughts on Killers of the Flower Moon. Hit like and subscribe if you want to see more videos just like this. Click the link down below for Patreon. We do monthly watch-alongs. They're a lot of fun. And you guys get a chance to win movies every single month, so that's a lot of fun as well. And wow, that's my longest review I've done in a long time. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you guys made it this far. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.